Hello everyone, welcome to the meeting. Placing Resources Overview Committee. My name is Andrew Starr, I'm your chair. We've got the B team on today, but Andy can't make it, I'm afraid. Right, welcome to all of you. Please remember that when you use your microphone, you must press the button to switch off your microphone after you've spoken. The system allows one microphone to be used at a time. The red light means that your microphone is on and the camera will automatically pan towards you. Please also note that the microphone should not be moved. Please speak directly into the top of the microphone and try to avoid turning your head when speaking. And I'm sure speaking to the converted there on that. Anthony, you've got something to say?
Today we are showing our commitment to inclusion at the heart of all we do. Microsoft Teams now offers avatars, and which is a digital representation that allows people to attend meetings virtually. Avatars support accessibility and greater flexibility in how individuals can engage in virtual settings. Their use reflects our values around equality, diversity and inclusion, and ensuring everyone can contribute fully. An officer will be attending today's meeting using an avatar, and we are welcoming this as a positive step towards a more inclusive and supportive meeting practice.
Thank you. Right, apologies. Back to you again, Anthony, please.
We've had apologies from councillors Andy Canning, Simon Gibson and Richard Crabb.
Many thanks. Right, the minutes, to confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of May. If anyone got any objection to the minutes, any issues? No? Okay, thank you very much. Declarations of interest. As any member, ask if any member has any declaration of interest and wish to make to take action, and will applicably, please. Anyone got any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Public participation time, no public present? Oh. Hang on, carry on. Can we, Sherry? Apparently, we were muted this end. So, if that's okay with everyone online as well as here, we'll carry on. Thank you. Public participation time. No public participation time. Right. Dorset and BCP joint local transport plan.
Questions from councillors now.
Sorry.
Questions from councillors now.
Yeah. Presenting, well, we have the Owen Clark, and Owen Clark would be presenting that, please. Yeah, thank you. Well, it's John. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very pleased to be here today to introduce these three important reports that together form a vital part of Dorset Council's future transport strategy. The first is our draft local plan, transport plan, developed in partnership with BCP Council. This is a bold, forward-looking strategy that will guide our transport investment plans from 2026 through to 2041. It sets out a vision for safer, healthier and more inclusive transport system, one that supports economic growth, tackles climate change and improves the access for all of our communities. It will be delivered through 5-year implementation plans and a suite of supporting strategies. 2 of these supporting strategies are also here before you today. The first is the Active Travel Infrastructure Plan, which maps out a prioritised network of walking, wheeling and cycling routes across 7 key areas of Dorset. A prioritised improvement based on evidence and public feedback, and supports our ambition to make active travel the natural choice for short journeys. This plan is essential for our securing funding from Active Travel England and complements our wider goals around health and inclusion and natural environment. The second is the electronic vehicle infrastructure strategy, which sets out how we will be meeting the growing demand for EV charging across Dorset, with projections suggesting a huge increase in electric vehicles on our roads in the coming years. We must act now to ensure our infrastructure keeps pace. This strategy outlines how we will expand public and workplace charging and improve accessibility. Crucially, also ensures we remain eligible for future government funding. Together, these three documents form a coherent and integrated framework. The local transport plan provides the strategic direction, while the EV strategy and ATIP offer detailed place-based delivery plans that will help us realise our vision. I welcome your feedback on these reports and look forward to working with you and shape the transport system that works for everyone in Dorset. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Chair, but I have a time frame. I have to go to the funeral this afternoon, so I need to be gone here by 1 o'clock.
Understood, John. Thank you. Right, any questions from non-committee members? Oh, of course, sorry. Go to the presentation first, yeah. Okay. Please carry on.
I just need to share my screen. Right, thank you, Chair. Good morning, I'm Owen Clark, and I'm the Strategic and Policy Team Manager within the Highways Engineering and Travel Service. It's my great pleasure to be here this morning to introduce our draft local transport plan for 2026 to 2041. For the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to outline our new transport vision and our 6 key objectives, and I will set out how the plan is being informed by our residents, businesses and local stakeholders. I absolutely welcome this opportunity to engage with the committee and for the committee to be able to provide feedback that helps shape our final plans. The new local transport plan is a joint strategy developed by Dorset Council and BCP Council, and it replaces the previous LTP, which ran from 2011 to 2026. And the new plan reflects the significant changes in our transport needs, technologies, and the policy priorities that have occurred over the last decade. So the plan sets out an ambitious vision for how we want transport and travel to evolve across our region over the next 15 years. And it's not just about infrastructure, it's about shaping our places, improving people's lives, and responding to our climate and ecological emergencies. And it really matters to people because it affects everyone. It's how we get to work, school, healthcare, leisure, but also how we grow our economy and how we move goods around the area. We also reflect that transport's a major contributor to carbon emissions, so transforming travel is essential to meeting our net zero targets. The approach to this new local transport plan is fundamentally different to our previous LTPs. Our approach this time is vision-led, and this is a way of plan making that starts with a clear goal for the kind of future we want, such as cleaner air, safer streets, and better travel choices. Then we work out how we will get there. So instead of reacting to problems, we focus on creating positive change. And this approach helps us to deliver healthier, more sustainable, and more inclusive communities by guiding the decisions that we make and support our long-term priorities. The strategy aligns closely with spatial planning so that transport and development work hand in hand. Developing a new local transport plan at this time, alongside colleagues in planning who are developing the local plan, provides us with a huge opportunity to align policy and ensure that our development takes place in sustainable locations and that we can create places where our homes, workplaces, and a range of amenities are all within easy access of one another. The plan is based on strong evidence, and this includes analysis of transport data, We've taken a good look at the people, the places, the activities that people undertake. We've undertaken carbon modelling and extensive public engagement. Last year, over 3,800 people contributed to shaping this plan, helping us to understand local needs and priorities. Another major shift is a focus on decarbonisation. Transport is one of the largest contributors to our carbon emissions, and this plan sets out a clear pathway to reduce emissions in line with national and local net zero targets. I reflect that we are aiming for a balanced system that gives people real travel choices, whether that's walking, cycling, using public transport or driving. So in summary, this local transport plan is forward-looking, it's integrated, and it's an inclusive plan. It's designed not just to move people and goods, but to improve lives and places across Dorset.
Thank
Sorry.
yeah.
Reducing carbon emissions from transport is one of our biggest challenges. Transport is the second largest source of carbon emissions in Dorset, producing 27% of total emissions. Many of these emissions come from short trips and from commuting and business travel. In Dorset, almost a third of road transport emissions are from journeys under 5 miles in length, the sort of journeys that we can have most impact on. To meet our net zero targets, we need to cut transport emissions by 32%. This means encouraging more walking, cycling and public transport and supporting the shift to electric vehicles. We know this is a hard challenge, particularly in our rural areas and where the car is often the only transport option available. So this is one of the reasons why we need to take this place-based approach. In early 2024, we asked residents and local groups about their transport experiences, and this slide shows some of the key messages we received. We heard that often public transport does not meet people's needs, especially in our rural areas. People want to feel safe when they're travelling, using walking and cycling routes, but many people still rely on cars because of those concerns regarding safety. Better links between our towns and villages are needed and are critical for the connectivity of Dorset, within Dorset, but also beyond our borders within the region. People told us they would be willing to change how they travel, but only if they have good alternatives available. And we also heard that the impact that poor transport has on people's mental health, especially in isolated areas. So our vision for 2041 has been shaped by this evidence and this feedback from the public. We aim to deliver a sustainable, inclusive and accessible transport network that benefits everyone and supports a vibrant economy across Dorset and BCP. Over the next 15 years, we aim to increase transport options while improving safety, health, accessibility, connectivity and overall travel experience, while reducing pollution from transport. The vision is about transforming travel, making transport options smarter, cleaner and easier for everyone, whether you live here, work here or are visiting. We want to create places where active travel and public transport are a natural first choice for people, where digital connectivity supports flexible travel and where our transport system helps our towns and villages grow, but in a sustainable way. To achieve our vision, we've defined 6 strategic objectives, each one designed to tackle specific challenges and deliver meaningful improvements for residents, businesses and visitors across Dorset. Together, these objectives form a comprehensive framework for delivering positive change, supporting healthier lives, stronger communities and a more sustainable future. I'll now go through each objective in turn to highlight our key policies and what the plan seeks to deliver. So Objective A is about tackling one of our biggest challenges, as I've already explained. Transport accounts for a significant share of our local carbon emissions, and without intervention, we face a significant gap on our pathway to net zero. So our policies focus on reducing emissions through modal shift and digital connectivity, accelerating the uptake of zero-emission vehicles, supported by the delivery of infrastructure like EV charge points and hydrogen refueling stations, addressing other sources of pollution, especially where they impact on areas of deprivation and ecological sensitivity, and promoting nature-positive design. The plan will see us invest in things like EV infrastructure across our urban and rural areas, supporting community charging schemes, and planning for freight refueling hubs, so that we can close that emissions gap. Transport is a key determinant of public health, and this objective focuses on making walking, wheeling and cycling safer and more accessible by delivering a connected, attractive, active travel network. This will encourage sustainable travel, particularly for those short urban trips, and improve access to services, thereby reducing inequality. Our policies seek to deliver a joined-up active travel network that is safe, inclusive and attractive, promote the personal benefits of active travel in terms of health, cost and well-being, look to improve access to green spaces and leisure destinations, and ensure that our new developments embed active travel infrastructure from the outset. Objective C is about improving connectivity. That's access to jobs, education and services and visitor destinations to support sustainable development. Our policies seek to manage seasonal travel demand and improve access to tourism areas, enhance connectivity to ports, airports and freight corridors, improve access to education, employment and leisure, ensure that new developments support sustainable transport, and promote behaviour change through incentives and travel planning. The sorts of things that this could include are town centre traffic management strategies, freight consolidation centres, designing access packages to improve access to key employment sites, and supporting improvements to our strategic highway corridors. Objective D is about reducing road casualties, improving personal safety, and creating environments where everyone, regardless of their age, ability, or mode of transport, can move around confidently and comfortably. Our policies focus on promoting speed reduction, school streets, safe routes to schools, and investing in our infrastructure so that people feel safe, whether they're walking, using public transport, or using the highway. The resilience of our transport network is critical in the face of climate change, population growth, and evolving travel patterns. Our policies will ensure that we've got infrastructure that can withstand extreme weather and environmental pressures, improve our network management to reduce congestion and enhance journey reliability, and see that we embrace new technologies and sustainable materials. And finally, Objective F ensures that public transport networks work for everyone, especially those without access to a car. We will seek to improve public transport to offer safe, reliable and inclusive services. Working with partners, we will enhance the frequency, reliability and connectivity of bus services, supported by digital tools to improve the user experience. Through the plan, we will invest in our bus service improvement plan programme, deliver mobility hubs, seek to improve rail station accessibility, and look to pilot demand-responsive transport solutions. Our implementation plan is our delivery framework for the new local transport plan. So it translates our strategic vision into tangible short, medium and long-term actions and investments. Our first implementation plan, which is from 2026 to 2031, focuses on the high-impact schemes that are mature and ready to deliver, and it prioritises the schemes that will deliver early and visible benefits, reducing carbon emissions, improving safety, expanding travel choices, and supporting inclusive growth. We estimate that a combined £243 million will be invested from government grants through Implementation Plan 1. Other sources of funding include developer contributions and partner investments. The plan includes 95 priority schemes across the 6 objectives. Delivery will be place-based, with tailored interventions for the 5 local areas defined in the plan. Our carbon modelling shows that the Implementation Plan 1 schemes could reduce carbon emissions by 896 kilotons, closing around 19% of the emissions gap to net zero. So the first phase is about building momentum, demonstrating impact, and laying the groundwork for more ambitious transformation in our second and third implementation plans. This slide shows an example from the implementation plan of one of our local area maps with insets for the towns and the table showing the list of interventions for that area. It sets out what we plan to do, where and when. This slide highlights the key delivery mechanisms that will support the implementation of Local Transport Plan over its 15-year lifespan. We've got to recognise the LTP isn't a standalone strategy. It's underpinned by a suite of detailed plans and programmes that guide how we deliver on the ground. These documents ensure that our strategic objectives are translated into practical and coordinated actions. 2 of these will also be presented to you today. Together, these plans form the delivery backbone of the Local Transport Plan. They are more dynamic, so they can be updated regularly and to reflect new evidence, technologies and community needs. And we can develop additional strategies during the Local Transport Plan period to ensure that we remain responsive and effective. So we are now in the formal consultation phase on the draft Local Transport Plan, which runs until the 13th of October. This is a key opportunity for our residents, businesses and stakeholders to shape the future of transport across Dorset. The draft Local Transport Plan and Implementation Plan can be viewed online, and the feedback submitted via the Dorset Council website by visiting www.dorsetcouncil.gov.uk/Dorset is changing or the Dorset Council website /Local Transport Plan. We're hosting a series of drop-in sessions across Dorset and BCP to give people the chance to ask questions and share feedback in person. And this feedback's really important to us. The more responses we receive, the better we can reflect local priorities and build confidence in the final plan. All of the feedback that we receive will be carefully reviewed to help us shape the final version of the Local Transport Plan. And this slide shows the development timeline for the new LTP, covering the period from initial scoping through to adoption and delivery. So as I just said, we're currently in the consultation phase, shown by the blue marker. And after the consultation, we'll be reviewing the feedback, making the necessary adjustments to the plan, and finalising the plan for adoption in 2026 by both Dorset Council and BCP Council. The Local Transport Plan will be supported by a monitoring and evaluation framework with formal reviews every 5 years to ensure that the LTP remains relevant and effective. So some concluding remarks. The new Local Transport Plan is a transformational strategy. It's designed to deliver cleaner air, safer streets, better travel choices, and more inclusive communities. It's built on strong evidence. It's being shaped by public engagement, and we've ensured alignment with spatial planning so that transport and development work hand in hand. The first phase of delivery focuses on high-impact, ready-to-go schemes that will make a real difference to how people live, work and travel. We are now in the consultation phase, and we're really encouraging everyone to take part, either online or in person, because it's so important that that feedback shapes the final plan and reflects the priorities of local communities. So we're very excited about the opportunities that the new local transport plan brings. I now welcome any questions, thoughts or reflections. Please feel free to ask me anything about the strategy, implementation plan or the consultation process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Personally, I think there's no doubting your ambition, and we'll see what the members have to say about it. I'd like to start with non-committee members, and Councillor Ray Bryant, please, online.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Sorry I can't be with you in person, but unfortunately, medical reasons keep me away. I've got a few questions and a few comments. We mentioned cycle routes yet again, and cycle routes will only be a gain if cyclists use them rather than the road. There's more aggravation that comes by or comes from residents who have gone through the pain of having the cycle lanes installed, primarily in the east, because of the deal that was done prior to me having the portfolio to provide cycle routes in conjunction with BCP. So I'm not sure how to get the laws changed so that cyclists have to use the cycle lanes when they're available. I don't know whether Owen will have a comment on that later on. Another point is, why is it not legal for residents to use their four-wheel scooters, which for the elderly is a massive gain, on the cycle lanes? And is there something we're going to do about it? We talk about bus emissions. The bus emissions are caused by the older buses used by the current operators in our area. And I know for a fact that the operators are the particular operator over in the west is introducing new carbon neutral buses, but we seem to get all the old ones. And what are we going to do about that? I live close to the BCP area, and they have some very nice new buses that are provided by Moorbus. Our track record on gaining funding from government is poor, whilst BCP have a good track record. Will the LTP, will the local transport plan, will that level this out, or will we still be governed separately? And last but not least, last 2 points, if I may, with the introduction of electric buses, which are very costly to buy, how will we protect residents from high increases in bus fares? Will that mean more subsidies from the local council to keep these routes going? And last but not least, which is something I feel very passionate about, what is the plan for rural buses? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ray.
On cycle lanes and mobility scooters, I might actually ask my colleague Chris Peck, who's here to present the Active Travel Infrastructure Plan report, if he wants to comment on those now or whether he wants to pick those up in his piece of today's session. On bus emissions, we have set the target of a zero-emission bus fleet by 2035 within our bus service improvement plan, and we are working with the operators to try and achieve that. The emissions from public transport only makes up a very small percentage of our overall emissions, but it's actually something that we can change very quickly. So although it might only seem like a small element, actually being able to do that quite quickly achieves quite a significant gain in the early part of the local transport plan. Track record on funding and future funding, just a quick comment. We are starting to see now government give us allocations, multi-year allocations, which allows us to plan with more certainty. So we've seen that for the local transport grant, so we know what that looks like for the next 4 years. We anticipate the same being for the bus service improvement plan. So that will give us more certainty, but also allows us to actually programme, further into the future, so we can actually make some meaningful change. And if I just pick up I've got the full list, but the plan for rural buses. I mean, one of the things that we are really keen to do, and it was reflected through the bus service improvement plan that I worked closely with Ray and Knock to develop previously, is this idea that we don't leave rural places behind, but actually we try and look at how we can feed them into the public transport network, into rural mobility hubs, whether that be in a local town or in a larger village, but so that they can connect into the public transport network, whether that be via a community transport service or a small minibus type service, a demand responsive service. So that's the model that we want to look at, and that's what the local transport plan also will support. So we're looking to do that through some initial pilot work within the early years of the local transport plan.
Thank you. Now to Belinda, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth. So yes, thank you. I welcome the ambition in the plan. You won't be surprised to hear that I'm a little bit cynical, because the reality for us has been, since I was elected in 2022, we've lost 3 bus services, and we were in danger of having a very, very badly reduced bus timetable, which would have significantly disadvantaged a lot of people in West Dorset, particularly our school students. And luckily, I'm happy to say that Dorset Council has stepped in and remonstrated strongly with the bus company. So that is being rectified. So yeah, I'm sort of concerned that things are happening on the ground that Dorset Council isn't necessarily supporting or even possibly aware of, that there could be much more joined up thinking, there could be much more community involvement and ward members being involved more in the process. So I'd be interested to hear whether there are plans for that sort of joined up thinking with us and with town and parish councils to improve. And also, yeah, just to say that our MP had a public meeting yesterday in Lyme Regis, and needless to say, buses was the very, very hot topic of conversation. And he has asked the Transport Secretary for much more fair funding for rural buses, and not just to account to use deprivation as an indice, but to use rurality. Because it's ridiculous that we've got something like a third of, in the BSIP, the last round of funding, something like a third of our neighbouring authorities. But yes, I'd be very interested to sort of understand that we can be in I feel like, much more control of, not dictating, I'm trying to find the right word, but working with the bus companies for them to fulfil the ambitions in the plan. And the other thing, interestingly, that the MP is raising in Parliament, I think they said that they've tabled an amendment to have free bus travel for 16 to 18-year-olds, because that would definitely also help with, free public transport. It's not fair that the over six, or the retired people get the free travel, and yet students who have to stay on at school and college, many of them can't afford to do it because of the cost of transport. So, yeah, there's lots of things going on locally, and I'd be interested to know how we can work better together to fulfil the ambitions. Thank you.
we are on a journey with improving public transport, and I didn't mean the pun intentionally, but we've set up an enhanced partnership, and that involves much closer working between the council, the bus operators, and the stakeholders, the users themselves. So it's about working through that enhanced partnership to try and strengthen that working arrangement, so that those situations like you described can be addressed without them reaching the point which they had this time. And we do that through having a bus user group, which the parishes, the towns, the transport action groups, users themselves come participate in. That's how we understand what those priorities are that feed into the bus service improvement plan, that helps us to then make the decisions about how the BSIP money can be spent most effectively. But you're right, what has hampered our ability to make those improvements to date has been the lack of revenue funding that we've received from government to actually make improvements. So we've done our best to maintain the network, but actually we want to start making improvements to the network, and that is where we're going to need that increase in funding.
Does that answer the question, John?
Yes, again, it does in theory, but the practice seems not to be working at the moment, is all I can say. There's recently a bus service was initiated by West Dorset Commons, and then Bridport Town Council got involved and sort of co-funded, but that's the kind of thing that you were talking about, where communities, that there are other solutions that can be developed by communities. And so, yeah, I entirely agree with the aspiration, but I just feel that in practice it's not happening.
John?
Councillor John Andrews, Sherborne Cabinet Member for Play Services. I forgot to do that the first time. You mentioned, Councillor Bowden, the 16 to 18-year-olds free bus, and I know certainly there has been talk around Westminster about it. We costed it, and at the moment it would cost Dorset Council £11.5 million, which we haven't got. So we are actively pushing our MPs for that. Myself and the leader have a consultation tomorrow with the South Dorset MP, the Weymouth MP, and of course conversations go on with the rest of the MPs in our area. But to bring in a policy that meant people had to go to college or school between 16 and 18 and not fund buses. It's okay if you live in a big inner city, London, Manchester, but when you live in a rural area, that could cost people thousands of pounds a year. Income that in a rural area probably they can't afford. Definitely they can't afford. So yeah, we are pushing for that, and we will be meeting with the MP, Mr. Hatton, this week.
Thank you, John. No other questions from non-members of the committee? So in that case, Councillor Tarr, please.
Yes, I thought.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Councillor Northam?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Northam, Upway and Broadway in Weymouth. I've got a few questions. I also welcome the ambition of the LTP. I'm sort of a little concerned. First question is, of the total sort of funding that is asked for, there seems in previous years to have been a large amount of funding spent on the BCP area, and I noted somewhere or other it mentioned 15 million, and I wondered whether that was in para 4.2. I wondered whether that was solely for Dorset Council or was for both Dorset Council and BCP, or whether BCP also gets some money, and if so, how much. So that was para 4.2. That was my first question. So I'm really asking there, are we getting a fair share of the funding when we're having to deal as Dorset rather than as Dorset Unitary? Okay. The second question is, I was really pleased when the Levelling Up Fund bid went in 2021 for the transport interchange hub on the outskirts of Weymouth. This included electric buses and a scheme to improve. Sadly, it wasn't successful, but I see the resurrection to some extent of this in the mobility hubs, which identifies a mobility hub in the park and ride on the outskirts of Weymouth. I'm hoping that it will also address the additional features that were identified in the interchange hub, so that it's seen as a place where people park their cars and proceed into Weymouth using electric vehicles, whether those are the buses, scooters, electric bikes, because that's the sort of thing we need to look at. And I'll save the question on personal electric vehicles for later. And the last point is within the briefing pack, within the slide set, the officer's report, para 3.4, mentions a councillor briefing pack and toolkit to support the consultation. The consultation expires on the 13th of October, and I can't recollect receiving such a toolkit. Could I? So that's 3 questions, if I may. Thank you.
Any other? Mr. Clark, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of clarifying the funding split, I'm going to refer to the implementation plan, which is available online, which in Annex A on page 40 shows the Dorset Council estimated funding resource to develop and deliver the Local Transport Plan Implementation Plan 1. And that shows that in 2026-27, our local transport grant capital is just over 2 million. And then by 2029-2030, rising to 5.5 million. And that is one of the confirmed multi-year allocations. And we've set out within that table a number of the sources of government funding, the level that we currently receive, and that's how that figure has been calculated based on either confirmed or estimates of expected funding based on what we've historically received. Weymouth Park and Ride, I'm pleased to hear that the councillor supports development of the Weymouth Park and Ride as a mobility hub. We are keen to do something there tied into the regeneration work of Weymouth, looking at the town centre master plan and energising that part of Dorset. So it will form part of that wider programme in terms of delivery of that scheme. And the toolkit, I would have to defer to my comms colleagues and check this outside the meeting, but I believe that all councillors received a briefing kit which included posters and leaflets that they could then use to distribute within their local community. But if they haven't, I can check that and we can make sure that those are provided.
I understand that not everyone's received that. I don't think I did.
May I come back in? I did receive a pack of leaflets that was for both the local plan and the transport plan, but I wouldn't call it a toolkit. So could you see if there's more to come? Because I'd quite like to do that. I'd also like to follow up with one of the briefings that's offered to the town council. That would be really helpful. We have a Tuesday evening briefing slot, and if we can get one in before the 13th of October, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, just coming back on your first question, do we get fair funding compared to the rest of our neighbours? No. Plain and simple, no, we don't. They've got proportionally more than us in the BSIC funding over the last 2 rounds of BSIC funding at the very least. So no, we don't, and that's another piece that we'll be putting in Mr. Hatton when we speak to him tomorrow.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Now online, Councillor Jesperson, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Sherry Jesperson, Hillthorpes Upper Terrace Ward. First of all, I thank you very much, Owen. That's a really good presentation, and it's a excellent vision statement here. It's ambitious and it's clear, and I think it's something that we could all pretty well sign up to in that sort of high level vision. So thank you very much for that. I've just got a couple of comments, and the first comment I have to make, and I'm not sure, this isn't for Owen, I'm not sure who this is for, but could we just take a bit of learning out of this? I think I understand there might have been some logic of putting the consultation on this out at the same time as the consultation as the local plan, because in our minds these things sort of fit together. I think personally that that's proved to be a mistake. It's been very difficult out in the community to get the level of attention on this policy that it needed and deserved, because the local plan, which is easy, which people are much easier, find easier to relate to, is really sucking up all the energy. So just a little bit of learning. That was probably seemed like a good idea at the time, but I think it hasn't worked terribly well. So could we think again before we do something like that again? That's just my personal view. But I mean, nobody needs to answer that. I just wanted to get it out there that it's not been as effective as we might have hoped. In terms of this policy, so just a couple of comments. On objective B, which is to ensure that new developments incorporates active travel, we would hope that the new local plan will have some strong mechanisms to make sure that that happens. But the local plan doesn't come into effect till probably early 2028. And I have to say that at the moment, that is not the experience that we are finding, that there is development is being having to be approved all across the rural parts of the county, large developments on the edge of villages that absolutely provide no concessions, no improvements for active travel, no improvements to roads or any other kind of infrastructure. So that's a good ambition. Could we see what there is to actually make that more of a reality for those of us in rural areas who are subject to a lot of development and will be subject to a lot of development for a number of years going forward? Because just to write that in as an ambition in a plan doesn't make it happen. So there's some piece of work that needs to be done with planning, not just in the local plan, but for now to make that a reality. The other two objectives D and E, again, excellent objectives. That is to make our road network more resilient and to improve road safety and the road safe team. Now, excellent ambitions, that those would mean a great deal to the residents where I live in rural North Dorset, but that again is not what we're experiencing at the moment because of budgetary constraints. Now, if it is an ambition that Dorset Council has signed up to, that we're going to improve our make our road network more resilient and we're going to improve road safety, then we have to be prepared to support the budget needs of highways. Highways budgets are very easy to cut because they are they are demand driven, but they're not demand driven in the same way as some other parts of the council are. So those budgets are always very vulnerable when money is tight. And I think we have to acknowledge that if we want our roads to be safer and we want our roads to be better and easier to use, then we're going to have to spend not just the Department of Transport's money on it, but our Dorset Council's money as well, because DFT may provide most of the capital funding, but it's up to Dorset Council to make sure that we've got enough community highways officers, that we've got enough road safety officers and so forth. So there's a bit of joining up there when we all come to discuss the budget. Can we not sacrifice the highways budget too harshly, because otherwise we won't be meeting that objective. And then the final point, and we've said a lot already about rural buses, so I'm not going to repeat what colleagues have said, but I do have to make this point that I have to make every time. When we talk about bus improvements, you're talking about improvements to the existing bus service. And that's what you spend the BSIP money on. You talk about a bus users group. Well, there are whole swathes of rural Dorset where there are no buses. So what we need is a no bus users group, perhaps, to give you their views. In other words, what we do is we spend the money we have on improving the service we already have, but we don't grasp the nettle that at some point we're going to have to spend money introducing services to places that have nothing or virtually nothing. And I never get an adequate response to that because the reply always is, well, we must spend a little bit of money where we get the most bang for our buck. I get that, but that's a mistake that it's an approach that local government and central government always takes, that continues to embed the disadvantage that rural areas that have no buses and no trains are already under. So could I ask, can we kind of have a whole new way of looking at that and not be improving our bus services where we have them, but introducing some kind of service for those areas that have nothing at all? If we're going to build all these new houses all across the rural parts of the county, which we are, then this need for transport is going to get more and more urgent. I don't think this part of the plan should be being pushed forward into phase 3 and 4 of this plan. It's urgent now. So I'd be glad to hear what Owen thinks about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Some very, very good points there, I thought. Now, Councillor Tarr? Oh, sorry, did you want to come back on that first?
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Yes, please, Chair. On the joint consultation, yes, we are aware of the issue that Sherry raised there about the local plan sort of overshadowing the local transport plan. We've recognised that through the focus of the comms work that the comms team are doing. So it's very local transport plan focused to make sure there's a clear message about the local transport plan and that people are aware of the opportunity and engage with that opportunity. And that's ongoing. In terms of the Objective B policies and new developments in the local plan, what we've tried to do in the local transport plan is give the local transport plan a bit more teeth in terms of the policy decisions within that. Local plan is obviously the key document for that, but make sure that there's clear expectations for developers set out within the local transport plan of what we would like to see, what we need to see from those developments. And then our transport development management team can work with the developers to ensure that those are the improvements that we see within our new developments. And I think I was going to hand over to Jack just on the point about budgets.
Mr. Berkshire. Seem to have a slight mic problem for a moment.
Come on. Jack Wiltshire, Corporate Director for Highways and Engineering. So just to pick up the budget point, Owen very clearly covered the local transport plan multi-year settlement from government. So excellent to have that better forecast of what we're going to spend. What we haven't had from central government yet is the much promised structural maintenance funding. So what we spend on effectively resurfacing our roads and maintaining the basic parts of a highway network. And we are promised we will get a multi-year funding settlement. I'm expecting to hear that coming out in the autumn budget statement in November. And then, yes, the question about what we need to go from there in terms of what your adequate investment needs to be for highways resilience. A very, very good question and very well put forward in terms of the rationale behind it. We will need to see what the multi-year government settlement is so we can then work out what that asset management plan is and what budget gaps there may be. Thank you.
Thank you. We will obviously watch this space. Councillor Tarr, please.
I would just like to say that Sherry Jesperson, Councillor Jesperson, has just made all the points I wanted to make. And I'd like to emphasise that we really do pay attention to those things, and obviously that's been taken into account, or being taken into account. I have a few things to add. I just mentioned that Active Travel England have a budget of 300 million a year for cycling and walking. That's against £1 billion every other week for roads construction, but it is a sum of money which I'm sure we will be tapping into. I'd like to thank Owen Clark and Chris Peck for all the work they've done on this enormous amount of work that's been going on there, and the support of their teams and the Highways Department. I think that's something that, again, Sherry said that, but I would like to really emphasise that an enormous amount of work went into this. I'd also like to thank all the people who contributed towards the plan by making comments and suggestions and so on. On the cycling front, which is why I wanted to speak later when the other items have been dealt with, the importance of cycling to some extent in Dorset is not just kids going to school and people getting to work, which is very important. And in Dorset, it's virtually impossible to do that any longer because the roads become so clogged up with traffic. So that, it's actually much worse than it was 50 years ago when it was very safe. Nearly every child at Hardy's School in 1974, when I came to work for this council and worked in this building, every child in Dorchester schools walked or cycled to school. And now you have these enormous queues of parents collecting them up every night, every morning, clogging up the whole town. So that's something which I really feel quite strongly about. But the point I want to make is that thousands of people come to this county to enjoy our countryside, what's left of it, and they walk the coast path. Millions walk the coast path. I meet 40 a day going each direction when I'm writing the books about the coast path. That's the sort of numbers. And that can be any time from May till the end of November. They also come back at Christmas and times like that, and you see people out on the path. And as you know, a lot of people are swimming these days. Even now, they're still swimming in the sea and stuff. So that's a tremendous attraction. It's well supported and it's a good path. But that is for pedestrians only. There's no equivalent cycling way of doing that route. If you cycle, you have to go right inland on some of our lovely rural roads. But it's not that system. It's not advertised. It's not supported. There's no website saying come cycling in Dorset. If you look at our neighbours, they have extensive information. They have tourist information centres in the town still, which issue information about where you can go cycling and walking. They have guides who take people out in groups cycling. I know the big ships do that when they come from Portland, but it's not done in the county generally. And we've got small villages with pubs and shops which are closing. I cannot see some of the pubs I've been going to recently on my cycle trips. I cannot see them surviving the length of this administration. They're getting no customers at all at this time of the year. They're open from Wednesday to Sunday. And yesterday we went to a Sunday opening to celebrate somebody's 80th birthday, and the chef was off, so we didn't have any food. They are really suffering from the lack of expenditure inland, and not so much on the coast, but certainly inland and in the villages. I think we should be supporting our villages with tourism. Tourism is probably our biggest income earner in Dorset. Agriculture is the largest land use, but tourism is really vital to a lot of people in this county, in the villages. And this Active Travel England hardly mentions tourism in its magnificent documents about this. And we've stuck to Active Travel England's reports and advice because they're giving us the money. And that's what we should do at the moment. But I think we should make a very strong point to government that tourism is important to a lot of counties in England and should be given special consideration. We cannot get any money, for instance. Golden Cap is inaccessible because we've got an A35, 10-metre strip of concrete racetrack along the coast, which is unsafe to travel along or to cross. And we can get no cycling for funding in that area. And that is our Jurassic Coast, one of a world attraction. You can't cycle there. The walking's fine, but the cycling is impossible. So I think we should be looking at these problems. There's tremendous potential for earning money there. There are some landowners who are developing it inland, and we should be linking all those things up and making Dorset into a place to come to cycle. So thank you very much to the teams that have done all the work on these reports. Magnificent work. Owen Clark and Chris Hex have been working really hard on all this, I know, over the last few years. And that's my main point, really. Tourism should be a part of the equation. Our local economy needs it.
Thank you. Oops.
Thank you, Chair. I'm asked to respond because it's more a kind of active travel issue, and can't help but agree with what Councillor Tarr says on many of those issues, particularly around severance in rural areas and all those matters, which are often a matter for national highways to deal with. That's their road network, which is often causing the severance issue, and we raised that repeatedly with them. In terms of the opportunities for tourism, I think, as Owen mentioned in his presentation, the subsidiary documents there, one of which I'll be coming on to talk about, the Active Travel Infrastructure Plan, does incorporate some of these rural links. As he says, the means of accessing funding is very much heavily weighted towards urban links, access to schools, employment, and so on. So those rural links tend to not score quite as well when we apply for that external funding. But there certainly are opportunities in terms of economic growth, funding opportunities, which we are trying to access to support these rural links in other places. And certainly there are greater opportunities coming in the future. Another document that was referenced as a supporting document to the LTP4 is the Rights of Way Improvement Plan. And I think that will be a critical document to identifying some of these more rural links, which could be upgraded to form a better rural leisure and tourism-focused network to support that area. Thanks.
Thank you. I would certainly echo what Councillor Starr's been saying. It does bring up, I see a lot of people that holiday down here by bike, and it would be nice actually if we'd finally get a nice round the harbour route that was suitable for cyclists, which is always just around the corner, but we haven't quite got it yet. Thank you. David.
Thank you, Councillor David Taylor from Chelmsford St Mary Ward and Vice Chair today. Can you hear me? I'm on, right. Yeah, a lot of the points raised there, which has been absolutely fantastically explained. Principal thing I keep looking on the overall document itself is the age of the population. Looking at the age group we're looking at to actually service within our community. As we know, the age gap rising from over 60 will be rapidly rising in about 4 years to practically 40% of the population. So that's a vast increase we're looking at. So you've got the possibility of non-use of cars because they can't drive, a lot of them, after 70 or 80. And then you've got also the fact that the lack of buses, which we've got, which we've already discussed at depth, and we need more buses in the thing. Financial stability, as in the financial equality, would be lovely. As we know, from Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, they get a hell of a lot more money than we do. And it seems to be very irregular, considering the population of Dorset equals BCP almost identically. So the fact is there's no difference scored on there. I noticed also about the road safety, which we did notice as well, motorbikes. We do have a lot of unfortunate fatalities within our county with going on. And it's the thing that we need to address. We are addressing actually on the roads because when we are around, we do see much so could beware and flashing signs coming up. So they are being recognised. It's just making it more obvious and more psyche to the person really that's driving to take care when they're in the county. So care of driving might be an issue there of actually looking at implementing that of an idea of awareness within not just Dorset, everywhere, but our countryside. We do have very narrow lanes, and we do have problems with, unfortunately, with fatalities and injuries, which is quite massive on that one there. The things that I think the review of 5 years, I was pleased to see that, but we looked at the figures as well. We're looking at reviews of 5 years on the plan, but how are we reviewing it? That would be the way I'd like to see is how are we going to do it? Because the public, actively engaging with the public on this is absolutely paramount, because they want to feed into this as it's their programme, actually, and things that they would like to input as it goes on. And I think that should be an open debate always going on, because there might be some fantastic ideas out there which we've left behind. So there's things, so bus availability, it's age of population, motorbikes, which I've mentioned, rights of way. Christopher, I'd like you to come on this one. That one. We've had kind of discussions in the past, the fact of the lack of funding and the fact is what we've got is joining up our bridleways as well, which is difficult because of lack of funding as well. So I think the emphasis on the transport plan should be the walking, the cycling, and mobility scooters, horses, this, that, and the other. It's part of our culture of Dorset to actually do that, and it should be more paramount than actually the car, to be quite honest. And the thing is, there's reference to the coastal paths, and this, that, and the other. Accessibility is pretty poor, unless you go by car. And that, to me, is wrong. You know, we should be looking at the connectivity. With the local plan at the moment, we're looking at connectivity across our county, of bringing all the bridleways and pathways to connect up new developments. So it should take paramount on this. Several questions in there. I hope I can have some answers from Sir. Thank you. Thank you, Owen.
One that I was very keen to pick up immediately was about the road safety. I was very pleased to have the opportunity to present to the Dorset Road Safety Partnership earlier this week, and explain how safety is a key foundational sort of principle all the way through the local transport plan, but also hear from them the work that they are doing as a partnership to refresh their strategy, to develop a delivery plan which supports the local transport plan ambition. So around those vulnerable groups, the safe systems model and collision reduction. So there was a lot in there that is really useful and just, again, emphasises the LTP isn't standalone, it's supported by the work of partners, it's supported by these other plans and strategies, these delivery plans. So I think that's an important point, which I hope I made in the presentation, but that's another good example. I'm happy to take your point about how we review the plan, how we communicate with the public away, and give that some further thought. So that I think you've hit the nail on the head. How we communicate that, how we can take feedback and reflect upon that, so that it's a continual process rather than being every 5 years and then in between.
And we mentioned about the highways, pathways and bridleways. Can we have some form of action on that, please, Chris?
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's not something that's directly linked from the Active Travel Infrastructure Plan or the LTP, but as I say, the Rights of Way Improvement Plan is another subsidiary document to this, which will be a critical document to identify that. And as you'll know, in the council plan, there is a commitment to improve 300 miles of rights of way over the period of this council. So I know that colleagues in Green Spaces, who we work very closely with on developing some of these more rural links, have got a lot of plans. Obviously, there's some recent schemes which have gone in, things like the long-awaited link from Chiddick up to Quor Hill alongside the A35 is a major improvement in unlocking part of the network there. And there are quite a few other schemes like that which are being planned by our colleagues in Green Spaces. So we work very closely with them, and there are some places where we overlap, but generally rights of way improvements will be something that they manage, since they're the asset manager for that network, and they maintain that and so on. So we can look to help them with funding, and we can look and help them with sometimes constructing the schemes or improving them, but generally rights of way is held by a slightly separate team than transport planning and highways.
Thank you, Chris. I'm coming back to you, Chair. Yeah. Connectivity is the question on this one here. And I'm going to bring in Councillor Tile with this because we've been on about for years of Network Rail and other people would be partly coming in on this and that one there. So the connectivity is the trains, the cars, because I often see camper vans with bikes strapped to the back in Dorset. So we're looking at the possibility of connectivity of giving them the chance to know where it all is and actually promoting in some way. So that will be the connectivity, which will be very important to us, and make sure the railway systems are doing it as well on that one there. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Pothker is next, but would you mind if this, as we're on that vein, would you mind if Councillor Norton finished the reply to that?
It's up to you, Chairman. It's your meeting.
Okay, carry on then.
Thank you. I'd just like to pick up a little bit on rights of way. It's a very arcane process. The central government legislation has been in place for a long time. In 2018, I submitted a rights of way, creation of a new rights of way on the 20 years use basis. I received yesterday a letter from the officer telling me that the order is going to be made, which I'm really pleased about. However, that's just the next step, because if the landowner objects, then it goes off to the Secretary of State and we in another period of negotiation and everything. So what I'd like to ask is that when the meeting takes place with our MP, that we actually raise, can we look, we've got a really extensive network of highways, but doing anything with them to change them is a very laborious process, and that's governed by central government. So can we pick that up when we have the conversation with our MP, please, that rights of way, we've got the ambition to improve rights of way, but it needs to be eased rather than blocked, because at the moment any landowner can block anything for a very long time. And there are some, we've got an English coastal path with a section which is still in dispute and has been in dispute since the concept of it, in fact, goes back to when it was the, whatever it was before. So there are lots of obstacles which will be thrown against this ambition, and we need to get some movement from government on that. Thank you.
We're rather in danger of going on to the next active travel plan rather than the one we're supposed to look at. Councillor Pothker, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your consideration just now. And I would like to apologise for being late to the meeting. I very much agree with what's been said earlier by Sherry and Roland, particularly. So that's all, you know, I'm just adding my support for just about everything that's been said in that direction. And by the way, I would very much welcome a toolkit. So to state the obvious, it's really important that the consultation is widely commented upon, the consultation that's happening at the moment, and that we obtain as many views across all ages and sectors as we can. So I'm sort of bringing the meeting back to where we are now, if that's okay. So could I ask, please, how the responses to the consultation are going? And that's question one. Question two is how many presentations have been made to our town councils? And three is it intended to promote the plan to all our town councils? I think that's it, and I wanted to thank Owen for a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry? Yeah. Please go to reply to that, please.
Could I just ask the councillor to repeat the third point? I didn't quite catch that.
Sorry, the third one was, is it intended to promote the plan to all our councils? Just so that we know that across the patch, everyone's had an opportunity to respond and understand how important it is that they give it their attention and respond.
Yeah, so on the point about all ages, we absolutely agree. We certainly want to hear from a broad cross-section of respondents from across Dorset, make sure that it's reflective of Dorset as a whole. To that end, our comms team are placing a great deal of effort in terms of trying to engage with younger people. So school briefing packs have been sent out with lesson plans that focus on aspects of the local plan and the local transport plan to engage them in thinking about the places that they want to create for the future of Dorset. We're using paid social media ads to target those younger audiences and trying to engage them in different ways. So those are some of the examples of the work that's being done in that space. Briefing information's been sent out to all of the town and parish councils, and what we are seeing is that we're getting a very good turnout of town and parish councillors at the drop-in events, the briefing events. So we're having those sort of face-to-face discussions, answering questions. We know from those discussions that a number of the parishes are focused on the local plan and getting their responses into the local plan, but are well aware of the deadline and are working on a local transport plan response. We've had a small number of requests to extend the deadline for town and parish councils so that they can go through the proper governance procedures, and we are willing to do that and have some flexibility around accepting consultation responses after the official deadline. So I think I've covered the 3 points.
You say you obviously you're getting engagement from local councillors at these drop-in meetings, but obviously they're not covering all the local authorities or the town and parish councils. Are you getting people from neighbouring town and parish councils coming into those meetings?
Yes, our drop-in centres, drop-in sessions are focused sort of in the larger towns. We've got some villages covered, but what we are seeing is that they act as a sort of hub, and we see people coming in from the surrounding parishes to express their views. So then it's not just the towns that are being represented at those drop-ins.
As been said already, that of course the trouble with the local plan is tending to take all the attention. But on the other hand, of course, if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't be getting the people in. So you're probably seeing more people in that way than you would if it was you try to do it as a separate plan.
Yes, that is definitely the case. The drop-in sessions are being very well attended. We're speaking to and engaging with a lot more people off the back of it being joint in that sense with the local plan consultation. But it's also an opportunity to answer some of their questions on things that don't directly relate to the local transport plan, but where there's that crossover between the local plan and the local transport plan. I think it helps reinforce that these are two really important strategies going forward that do shape the future of Dorset and how they work together to do that.
Yeah, they do lean on each other rather, don't they? Yeah, thank you. Any more quick thoughts? Piers.
Thank you, Chair. Try and keep us on topic. I'll try and avoid talking too much about active travel, because I appreciate we're just about to move on to that. There was a comment you made earlier, and I just wanted to uncheck my knowledge. You said a freight consolidation facility. In layman's terms, is that park and ride for stuff, effectively? Is that what that means? So it's unloaded on the outside of a town and then moved inside?
Yes, I've not heard that analogy used quite like that, but in essence, yes, it's about sort of intercepting the large lorries before they get into the town centres, offloading those into smaller vans, making sure that sort of is efficient as possible, and then transporting those goods into the town centres.
Do we have any indication from industry that's something they would consider because that feels like quite a stretch, because ultimately that's how logistics works within a company. I can't see them wanting to share facilities when that could be a USP.
So that particular example is an area that where, from a policy point of view and from speaking to other stakeholders, there's that intention, that ambition to develop a scheme. But this is actually one where it needs to be developed. We would need to undertake sort of more detailed conversations with industry to understand exactly how that could be achieved. So within the lifetime of the LTP, there's that aspiration, but it's not an immediate scheme for delivery at this stage.
Okay. My personal assessment is we should just leave that to the commercial private sector, and if they want to do that, then they will. But I just thought it was interesting, and I wanted to check my knowledge on that. On a high level, because obviously we've been asked to comment on the vision and the objectives, as well as the ongoing consultation today. I just wanted to express, I guess, my concern and look for reassurance that we spent the vast majority of this morning talking about decarbonisation, active transport, whereas approximately 75% of journeys in Dorset Council area contain a motor vehicle. And I'm a bit disappointed that safety and sort of crash reduction is relegated to objective D and E, rather than being the overarching priority that I think it should be within the active transport plan. Of those 6 objectives, 4 relate to the environment, 2 relate to safety, and there is a passing mention in the objectives relating to congestion, but nothing about reducing overall journey times, because the 2 are different. And I think reducing overall journey times can apply both to public transport as well as private motor vehicles as well. To give you a little bit of an idea, if we could save 10 minutes in each direction on a commute, which during COVID, my commute was 10 minutes shorter in each direction, that is 4 waking days a year we save for that person. No, we sort of we snark, but that is saving people's lives. It's giving them freedom to go out and do other things. And also I think it's really important for economic development and productivity here in Dorset. We know that companies are not keen to set stuff up in Dorset because it takes so long to get stuff out of Dorset to sell it to other people. So I would really like to see that bumped up the priority list, and safety and reducing journey times put into the vision statement, because I do think when it comes to the local transport plan, that is the most important thing when it comes to our road network. As important as expanding and supporting public transport is, and decarbonising transport, safety and journey times, I think, should be our key objectives. I am willing to put that forward as a recommendation to Cabinet, but I just wanted to look for, I guess, initially some reassurance and hope, because I appreciate we've done this in partnership with BCP, and their objectives are going to be slightly different because they are an urban council and they are going to have less of a reliance on the motor vehicle than us in a rural council. Your sort of initial thoughts, and I guess any reassurance you can give.
So in terms of reassurance, the objectives aren't presented in any priority order. So each objective has equal importance as presented. Now, depending on the feedback, we may look to do that different in the final plan, and there may be some prioritisation. But at the moment, they're presented equally because they set the framework for achieving the vision. In terms of congestion and overall journey times, I agree those are 2 very important issues, particularly in terms of economic development. Whether or not they need to be reflected in the vision, I'm happy to review that alongside the feedback that we get from the public and stakeholders. One of the ways that we can address the congestion and journey times, as well as how we manage the network, infrastructure upgrades, is actually to transfer some of that traffic, particularly the short journeys, into our urban areas and within our urban areas, onto alternative forms of transport. So that has to be part of the mix. So, I guess to summarise, the local transport plan has to reflect all modes of transport, and equally address all of those different challenges in some way.
Two last quick questions. In terms of driving better safety, how do we see changes in safety technology factoring into the local transport plan going forward? I'm particularly thinking, like, we bought a new works van. Even that comes with lane keep assist. The problem is that the maintenance schedule that we run here in Dorset at 75% of white lines at the point in which we have intervention to repaint them means that that system isn't working for a lot of the time. And there is a direct correlation, is my understanding, within the industry between safety technology and reduced fatalities on our road network. And the second is, how can we, for those small journeys in town, how can we better work with central government to get better legislation around electric scooters so we can see those deployed in a way that's safe for pedestrians and more widely used? Because that, to me, seems like a great complement, as long as it's done safely, to those micro journeys within semi-urban areas.
I think on technology and safety, I'd have to recognise my own deficiencies and defer to our road safety manager and also the Dorset Road Safety Partnership in terms of where the technology sits within that overall strategy to reduce collisions and injuries on our roads. So happy that can be taken away and a response provided.
You need to raise it. There's motion.
Yes. Sorry.
Just picking up very briefly on the point about electric scooters, there's a window of opportunity to bid into the government at the moment to become another trial area for that. So we are considering at the moment whether or not we do that. So.
Thank you for that. I really want to move on, but Piers, would you like to raise a motion?
I'm happy to put something forward. I'll look for a steer, I guess. What kind of, if the committee is to make a recommendation, what form would you like that to take? I'm sort of looking at the officers. Obviously, we don't want to be rewriting your vision statement here and now. Do you want us just to provide it in the form of constructive criticism? And then you can obviously take that away, and obviously it'll be presented as part of the decision-making at Cabinet. Is that how you'd like that to look? Is that acceptable to? There's a lot of nods, so I'll try and word something up. So what about something along the lines of, overview and scrutiny? Would like to see priorities D and E move to the top of the priority list within the local transport plan, and the vision statement amended to include references to increase safety and reduce journey times of all users of our local transport network.
David?
I'm a little unhappy with focusing. I feel that's pushing too far back the other way. I liked this is a consultation phase. I like the balanced view of what was important, the way it was presented from a safety perspective and improvement perspective. And I think at this stage, we've all expressed a view that that's really important. The fact that we haven't talked directly about the need to improve the roads, and our north-south roads are the real problem in Dorset rather than the east-west ones, that's where I think we need more funding from central government, because that's part of even the national highway, I think, only covers east-west. It needs to be extended to cover north-south. So I think we're doing within what we can do as a county, balancing the approach as the right approach. That's not neglecting the main arterial routes, they're always going to be a serious consideration. We're not going to, most of the people are not going to catch buses to come into towns, they're going to drive. That's a realisation. Most of the businesses will be transporting their goods and their people will be moving by car. That we're not changing that. What we're trying to do is to get the change, to get other opportunities to decongest the road.
Okay, really like to move on. Would you be happy if it comes back to this committee and to judge whether they've taken on board your concerns or? Sorry.
The decision-making point will be Cabinet. This won't be coming back to committee ahead of a decision at Cabinet. Is that correct? Oh, it will. I do think I do feel quite strongly that safety and reducing journey times should be a priority within the local plan, the local transport plan, and I would like to push for a vote on that. That's going to take 2 minutes, Chair, and then we can move on to active transport and talk about cycling and walking again, if that's okay.
Okay, anyone to second that?
I'll second it.
Right.
It goes to vote.
They're all in favour? Against? Thank you very much. So that brings, really, I think we've more than covered that item. In fact, we've covered the first two items, really. So, sorry? Yeah. So what I propose we go to a break now, and that will come, say that we'll go into the Cabinet, and I'll come back here first and then go to the Cabinet. Well, yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for your presentation. It's been brilliant. Sorry?
Do the break.
Yeah, break.
10
Yes, we're
minutes.
going to do a break for 10 minutes. Yes, please.
10-minute comfort
Thank
break.
you.
Thank you.
We've had 9 of the 10 minutes. Hello. What is it? You... But welcome back, everyone. The next item on the agenda, which we've largely touched on anyway, is the active infrastructure plan. Chris Peck, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just bringing up my slides. So, yes, this presentation is on the active travel infrastructure plan for Dorset. Some of these slides and elements of this were presented previously to the committee on the 21st of November last year, which was, some of you remember, it was a slightly snowy morning, which a lot of people didn't make it here. So what this is bringing the committee up to speed with where we've got to since then, a bit more detail on how the plan has progressed and the interaction with some of the key stakeholders, and an opportunity again for the committee to ask questions. So in summary, I'll explain again what an active travel infrastructure plan is, why we're doing it, how it was developed, the data underpinning it, public and stakeholder engagement we've done so far, and how we develop the network plans and prioritise the schemes. So as Owen mentioned, the Active Travel Infrastructure Plan, or ATIP, is a subsidiary document to LTP4, and it provides a long-term strategy for improvements to walking, wheeling and cycling, where wheeling in this case includes a wheelchair, mobility scooters, other type of mobility aids. It provides a network plan for these routes linking neighbours to schools, town centres, leisure destinations and employment areas, but it is not necessarily totally a whole network for every single thing. Is looking at those key destinations, and it's not incorporating the sort of leisure and wholly tourism-related links that we mentioned in the questions to the previous presentation. Finally, it's about prioritising those routes, identifying which routes will generate the biggest benefits, and therefore which ones we can put forward to funding. And funding is the critical thing here, because this is not something where we are committing large amounts of council funding to it. We are dependent on central government grants to support this work. But we're doing it because we need to have a plan to enable those bids to central government to go ahead. We've had around £3.5 million of capital in the last few years, £600,000 of revenue funding from Active Travel England, and we will need a plan like this to maintain that level of funding in the future. Obviously, the other point is we want to understand where residents' priorities are. We want to understand where they want to see improvements, and therefore give us a clear understanding of where, when we propose something, we'll have a good reception to that. Aware of some of the points raised about where there have been difficulties and challenges with introducing schemes in other places. If we can have that early understanding of where the places are that people want to see improvements, that will help smooth that progress in the future. And then finally, that last point, which has all been referred to, about ensuring that new developments are linked to good quality routes within the network. So we're not putting down large development sites on the edges of towns where there's no adequate link to where residents of those developments will want to get to. That is a very tricky thing, but it's what, if we can map and plan where those improvements are, then we're in a better position to negotiate with the developers to secure a commitment to make those improvements. I won't go into this in a huge amount of detail, but the benefits of active travel are manifold. They're around the climate, they're around access to employment and skills, Health and well-being is the biggest one, though. This is a very large proportion of the benefits when we look at a business case for these schemes. 80 to 90% of it will come from the benefits of people being more active, particularly older people. And that's something obviously we know we've got an aging population here. The benefits for older people and being more active on a daily basis is huge, and integrating active travel into daily life is a big part of that. And then also, obviously, it's about travel choice and reducing local trips, which I'll go into in more detail. So how have we development? There's a sort of 6-stage development process here, which I will explain in more detail. And I've just sort of outlined on the right-hand side there the timescales of the more recent periods subsequent to the previous presentation to the committee in November of last year, which is the request then was to go to the town and parish councils and get more detailed feedback on the plans in their areas, and then bring that back to committee, which is what we're doing now. And then hopefully we'll be aiming to take that to Cabinet early next year, and we will publish it on the website and on a Dorset Explorer layer, so it can be looked at by some of the stakeholders and analysed in more detail. And I'll have a screenshot of that later on. So first of all, we identify the scope of the plan. The scope is kind of mapped out here. It's 7 kind of key urban areas and the hinterland around that, including the 2 main urban areas in East Dorset, which is around 100,000 people, and South Dorset, around 108,000 people, and then the key market towns around the rest of the county. It does not include all of the rural areas in between that, because these villages are lying a long way from their market towns, and therefore walking, cycling, or indeed mobility scooters are not going to be likely to be more than a fraction of the users to get to the services they're trying to reach in those market towns. But it does cover 15 of those the kind of key town centre areas and 85% of the Dorset population. On the second part of the plan, we look at the kind of data underpinning it. What we've looked at, I'll go into each of these in turn, but these range from the number of households without access to vehicles in the area, job distribution and density and population density, the key commuting movements in those areas, and the routes with the highest potential for cycling, which is one area where we have good data. So just as give an example from the east of the Dorset area, in terms of households with access to vehicles, this is from the 2021 census. Over 1,000 households in Ferndown without access to vehicles, 750 in Wimborne, 400 in Westmoors. But as you can see from that map, where the darker blues indicate a higher proportion of households with access to vehicles, it tends to be focused again in the town centres. These are obviously people who are probably our most vulnerable residents. They're older people, they're more deprived communities. These people are particularly dependent on walking, cycling, mobility scooters, wheelchairs, and access to public transport to get around. And that's really underpinning why we're focusing these areas. These are the residents that we know their transport needs are not met through access to a vehicle. Just another example, this is Dorchester. There's almost 2,200 households in Dorchester and over 5,000 in Weymouth. Across the whole of the Dorset Council area, it's 23,000 households without access to vehicles, according to the latest census. Another layer here, we've got the job density. Again, this is very unevenly distributed, as everyone will be aware. Very high proportion of jobs focused in certain areas, which obviously creates these transport demands. This is showing, again, the eastern area. The yellow dot in the middle is that's the Ferndown and Uddens Industrial Estate, where there's over 3,000 jobs located, whereas in other places such as Ferndown Town Centre or Wimborne Town Centre, there's around 1,000 or 1,500 jobs, and then much lower levels scattered around the rest of the area. And the effect of this is to concentrate the movement. This is commuting patterns in the area, and the reds indicate a higher proportion of trips for commuting by car, whereas the blues and greens indicate a higher proportion by active travel or bus. So what we can see is that obviously for these short journeys in and out of Wimborne Town Centre or Ferndown, you've got reasonable shares already of active travel or bus or sustainable transport, whereas obviously, as we understand, the longer distance journeys, there's a higher proportion of car commuting. But this map shows just those 30 kilometres or less trips. It doesn't show the long distance ones, and it's just the key movements. We know that in this area, there's around 8,500 people who are travelling short distance, and in part those key movements, and around a quarter or 28% of them are travelling actively at the moment. That is already saving 300,000 vehicle kilometres, saving 58 tonnes of CO2 per annum. There's the potential for up to 50% of those trips to be made by active travel if we improve the network, if we change the culture to support that. This is based on modelling we have from the work that's been done for the Department for Transport, based on the sort of best practice elsewhere in the world or elsewhere in the country. So it's an aspiration, but the results would be we would save, instead of 300,000 vehicle kilometres per year in commuting, we'd save 1.3 million vehicle kilometres per year in commuting, with the resulting CO2 and congestion benefits that would be obtained from that. So in addition to commuting, we've also, and here's another map from Bridport, you can also, it's a much smaller quantity of trips here, obviously, because it's a much smaller economic area. But again, the patterns are that within the town, there's pretty good levels of active travel, but there's also still big opportunities to shift more of those trips, particularly on a short distance. We can then map that onto the road network and look at particularly at the potential for cycling as a share of that. And this again is looking at the East Dorset area, and up to 1,000 trips could be for commuting purposes could be made by bike along that corridor in East Dorset, which has been a key focus of the work that we've been doing recently, the major work that Councillor Bryan referred to of the network along that corridor of Wimborne Road in Ferndown leading into Lye Road. And so this is very much underpinning why we focus on certain corridors rather than other ones. We've got the evidence of where we can demonstrate that we will have an impact if we build the scheme. And indeed, we're already showing that the level of uplift in usage on the schemes which have gone in there. In addition to that, we've got the patterns of school transport. You won't be able to see very much from these slides, but all this is in the report that's completed or in draft form. But this shows the potential for active travel to schools. Only around 36% of Ferndown children, and there's over 2,000 children that go to schools in the Ferndown area, travel actively to school. If this rose to 56%, this would save an additional 45 tonnes of CO2 per year, and again, release a lot of those short car trips in the local area to reduce congestion and safety. And this kind of refers back to some of the comments earlier about the percentage of school travel, which is done by car and by active transport, and how that's changed over time. The government's aspiration, which is to raise that to 55%. So again, that sort of 56% kind of adheres to that sort of level, is what we should be aiming for. It's perhaps not as good as 100%, but it's certainly an improvement on where we are at the moment in certain parts of Dorset. So with that data that's underpinning the plan, of which this is just a snapshot, an example from other places, we did a public engagement on asking residents for their views. This was done and has already been reported to the committee at the beginning of last year and the end of the year before that. We had around 1,000 responses. We asked for barriers to active travel. That is where people felt that there was a junction or a crossing which was impeding their ability to get to where they wanted to get to. And we had around 1,000 of those. And we had 400 routes submitted for us to assess and look at for where we should be focusing the network across Dorset. We had a very good response rate from the west of the county, a slightly less good response rate from elsewhere, but that was partly based on how we were able to get the comms out on it. But overall, a pretty good response rate. And then from this, as I mentioned, that we mapped out where the barriers are, particularly where we had multiple barriers in one place. We were able to cluster them, identify them, link that to where we proposed the network in that area, and that helps us to kind of feed into knowing what schemes we should prioritise. And also we identified from that the routes which were the priority for people. And here's an example of how we've mapped that, looking at the Dorchester area. the colour coding indicates where we felt that it already aligned with the network that we proposed, or where we need to look at it in more detail, whereas we decided to discard the very long distance leisure routes from this because they weren't something that we thought we could prioritise as part of active travel, acknowledging, as I've mentioned before, that there are also other mechanisms for supporting those sort of long-distance leisure routes. We have also included within this kind of key national infrastructure, such as the National Cycle Network, which passes through quite a lot of the towns in Dorset, which is, again, mapped on this network and also forms part of the network, particularly in the town centres. In addition to this, and subsequent to the meeting in November, we've gone away over this year and had a series of meetings with members and a lot of the town councils, and in addition to this, other stakeholder groups. This was to explain the plan development process, explain the local network in their area, and obtain their views on it. And I've listed some of the ones we've done this year. We've got a couple more coming up in October with Swanage and Portland. And yeah, so it's been an opportunity to really explore that network in detail at a local area, understand and explain why we've come to that network, and get some feedback. And we've made some alterations to that network as we've gone along, and there will still be opportunities to do that. This is, as Owen mentioned previously in his report, the opportunity with these subsidiary documents, the LTPs, they can be more flexible, more easier to adapt them as you go along, as new developments come forward or new pressures emerge on the network. So the third and fourth stage is network planning, is actually identifying that network, as I referred to. This is a kind of a map of the Dorchester area showing the walking network. On it is listed all the key destinations, the employment areas, the schools, the kind of key leisure destinations, the town centre, and we focus the walking network up to 2 kilometres from the town centre, looking at how that connects. Alongside that, also we do the active travel network, more focused around cycling or indeed mobility scooter use that can cover slightly longer distances. Maybe micro-mobility if that comes to Dorset in the future. And this is, again, this map incorporates not just those key destinations, but also the development sites in the existing local plan. This is not the development sites in the emerging local plan, which obviously will look very different on this map. And that is, again, some of the data that underpins the map and will come into the prioritisation framework that we developed for this. Another example, this is the East Dorset area, showing the similar network for that area. The colour coding on this indicates where we've got a sort of secondary network or a primary network, or where there's a bit of the network which isn't there at the moment, which we want to introduce, perhaps in negotiation with landowners, or where we know there's a massive upgrade required. So on this map, you can see that there's the North Dorset Trailway. Southern link between Stemminster Marshall and Spettersbury is a long-standing link that we aspire to improve, and there are some other links in the Upton area as well that's on this map that isn't there at the moment, but needs to be incorporated in the future under the aspirations of the plan. So the fifth stage is prioritisation, and I did explain in the previous meeting that we developed these 8 criteria for how we prioritise the network, identify which of the parts of the network are going to receive more attention and to develop a scheme for. I won't go through these in huge amount of detail because a lot of them kind of correspond to the data which I've already explained that underpins the plan. But one of them I'll pick out, which is of particular interest when we've been talking about this to town councils, which is the number of walking and cycling casualties recorded by the police per kilometre of route. And just to illustrate this again for the East Dorset area, it shows that there are some key areas, particularly in the town centre, where we have evidence of a large number of reported casualties to the police. So the 2 highest scoring in this criteria in this area is right in the town centre in Wimborne at Priors Walk, and on Ringwood Road near Penny's Hill in Ferndown, where we have a very large number of pedestrian crossing movements and cycle movements also in close proximities with very busy roads. So not a surprise that these are the places that come out. But I think it reinforces that the point of this network is that we know we've got a real problem with those town centres where we've got high levels of traffic, where the safety isn't good enough to encourage particularly vulnerable pedestrians, children, to move around independently. And so even if we've got a good network in the edges of towns or in the suburbs of towns or in the kind of residential areas, it's those key barriers in the town centres which are still preventing more of those trips which would be made actively. And analysing particularly the casualty figures, I think helps to explain that. So from this and the other 7 prioritisation criteria, we can sort of map out where the highest priority links are, and those are the ones which are sort of yellow and green on this network. And again, just to reinforce what I've just said, they kind of tend to focus around the town centres, where we know we have the greatest potential to shift to active travel, where we know we've got the greatest number of casualties, and where we know we've got the greatest opportunities in terms of shifting some of that behaviour, and where the job density and population density is greatest. I mentioned that all this is going to be published on Dorset Explorer. It's already available internally on one of our Dorset Explorer layers, and this could be made available for members to view. It's obviously still in draft format, which is why it's not been published yet. And I'm aware that it's more useful to analyse this than sort of detailed maps. So we can certainly circulate a link to this in the notes and offer it to members to look at in more detail, as well as the published document. So in summary, I just want to say that this covers most of the urban areas of Dorset Council. That's 85% of the population. It's been informed by data on population, job distribution, mobility, access to vehicles, and the potential for a shift to cycling. We've done public and stakeholder engagement, which has helped sort of identify those particular local schemes which are critical. This has come up with a plan that is around 718 kilometres in length, which sounds a lot, but a lot of that route we're not looking at. We've identified potential schemes which we've discussed with stakeholders in around 124 locations. Again, that's a lot of schemes, but this is a kind of long-term plan, and we won't necessarily achieve all of those, particularly since there is no financial commitments within the plan to any of those schemes, and all of those schemes would be subject to further design, funding, bids or allocations, and consultation again with key stakeholders, and in some cases with the public as well. So the recommendation is really whether the committee can recommend this to Cabinet, and I would very much thank the committee for hearing this, and would be very happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. David, do you have a question, please?
Thank you, David Northam, Upwey Broadway Ward and in Weymouth. First comment, if I may. Thank you very much, Chris. What a mass of data. I look forward, sadly, to studying it in more depth. I confess I've not been able to study it in a great deal of depth. I note a route through Portland Dockyard, which has long been asked for by residents. There used to be a route. Whether that can actually be achieved would be wonderful, because it is a secure dockyard in many respects. I also like to highlight that the Weymouth Neighbourhood Plan has now passed its examination, and that's been announced, and so it does carry some weight. And within the Weymouth Neighbourhood Plan, there's a policy on improving cycle routes, and there's a map of cycle routes, and I hope that's already influenced you in your deliberations, and I'm hoping you can confirm that. So I guess that's good for now. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Northam. Yes, on the second point, I was well aware of the Weymouth Neighbourhood Plan and the map of cycle routes there, and had some input into that, and certainly there were some of the key routes which identified that we looked at as part of the developing the network plan here. I think the one critical issue there is that we're not, as I say, making a completely a full network, so we're not picking up all the links in the area. So that may be partly why there's a slight difference between the two approaches. On the Portland dockyard, that is listed as a red route, so it's not something that we have in control. It's an aspiration. It's obviously not something that is there that's available at the moment. But we are aware it's been a long-term aspiration to provide a better route from Underhill to Top Hill, and that would be one alignment that, if the arrangements in the port changed, or if there was an agreement with the private landowner, then obviously that would be a very good way of achieving that. But we're simply putting it there as identifying as a really good route that we would like to do in the future. It's not something that necessarily we could achieve at the moment. And that's the case with a few of those other routes, which are either across the moment land, which is not entirely under our control, or is in a state where we need a huge amount of work to bring it up to standard.
All happy? Yep. David Taylor, then I'll go online for Sherry Jesperson, please. David first.
Thank you, Anthony. That's an incredible presentation. Absolutely amazing, actually. It's good to see that we've got a grasp of the situation within Dorset regarding our possibilities for our future of cycleways and byways, etc. I noticed in the very beginning of the presentation, your funding is very small. It really is quite tiny. And I'm thinking, as a overall question for you, actually, and us, is to actually prioritise this so that we can make Central realise the fact is that we do need more of input of funding, as we are a rural community, and the fact is that BCP has a fantastic network of buses and everything, but we don't have a very fantastic network at the moment of cycleways and byways, etc. So there's a possible angle I'm just looking at to see whether or not we can actually input a funding or structure a way, because this data is incredible. You know, we've got the massive facts and figures just showing the use and what we've got going on in our county. So I'm just wondering whether or not we could look at it for help to say, put in a forward structure plan of getting your funding improved. That's the first question. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you. So that funding is just the funding from Active Travel England. So there are other sources of funding which support our work. So a lot of the work that was done in East Dorset around, which was aligned with BCP, was funded directly from central government under another funding source, under the TCF. And the importance of this is that Active Travel England, yes, their financial support at the moment isn't enormous amounts of money, but it's not insignificant. It's if you think that our LTP grant at the moment that Owen mentioned previously is just £2 million, and that is for all improvements. So crossings, safety schemes, and including anything kind of active travel related and new routes and so on. So it is quite important to make sure that we are in a place where we can continue to bid for that central government funding, and having a plan in place is really critical to ensuring that Active Travel England will continue to offer that support. At the moment, we're a level 1 authority for Active Travel England, and there are 4 levels in that, and we would like to get to level 2, which is where BCP is, and that would increase the level of funding that we get available. There are no level 4 authorities, by the way. It's a 4 level 1, but 4 is sort of God level. You can't go beyond 3 at the moment. But yeah, so that's the situation is that there are other sources of funding. This isn't the total that's available, but we're aware of obviously the financial constraints of the authority, and the capital money for these schemes has got to principally come from central government, and this is the one mechanism to ensure that we can continue to get it or increase that level.
Can I come back? Thank you, Christopher. That's fantastic. And I think the awareness of this could be an MP level, I reckon, across the board to say we do need this funding as we are a rural community and we do rely an awful lot on our tourism. And so therefore these people do come down with their bikes and walking like that. That was it. That's not there. No, I think I'm fine with that. Just to say thank you very much. The figures are amazing. Really are. Thank you.
Thank you. There's me thinking level 1 would put us at the top of the pile, but there you go. Yeah, Sherry, please.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, Sherry Jesperson, Hillforton Upper Clarence Ward. Thank you, Christopher. This is a good, interesting and good report, and it's very data rich, isn't it? So thank you very much for that. The more data-led we are, the better in this council. But it's on the subject of data. I want to raise a particular point, which is something that I've been pursuing across the council, and that's the road casualty data. Across Dorset Council, it can be problematic. This is because people don't report, by and large, road casualties unless there's either police involvement on the scene or they need to make an insurance claim. And with these kind of incidents, that's not very likely. And so one of the things I've been working for a number of years with the Dorset Council Road Safety and also with the Police and Crime Commission and the police to encourage to improve our data gathering about road safety, and also to encourage people to report even if it's just to let us know that an incident took place and no insurance involved. That is getting a little bit better, but historically this has been very poor because it was very hard to report casualties, incidents. It was also very hard to report to the police, and still is actually, and the data between the police and Dorset Council is still not as joined up as we would wish. So what I would urge you to do is look, of course, at the road casualty, the non-injury collision data and so forth that you have, but treat it with it. It's going to be underrepresenting those incidents across the board, including for if we're talking of people walking and cycling. So just be aware of the fact that it's likely to be an underrepresentation. And would you please do everything you can to support the road safe team and the police in gathering this data, because until we get really good data, I think we're always slightly underestimating how dangerous our roads are for pedestrians and cyclists and people with pushchairs and so on, because they tend to have accidents that they don't report. A case in point is in one of the villages in my ward recently. A pedestrian was hit by a passing vehicle and he was just walking along the road, and the vehicle didn't stop. It didn't seem very serious, but this gentleman had an injured arm and many months off work. He was a man who worked, he didn't work in an office, so that was many months with no income. So the consequence of that event was very serious for him, but it wasn't something that got reported anywhere because he didn't see why he needed to report it, because he wasn't claiming any insurance. So can you just be aware of that is an issue with this data? My question, having just shared that with you, my question is then, is there any opportunity for Section 106 or SIL funding to be that comes alongside developments to be used for this, or does this count as the kind of infrastructure that Section 106 or SIL funding could be used for? On the back of, I'm thinking in terms of the many more houses that are going to be built in the coming years, and that with that will come some SIL funding, and I'm just wondering whether or not this sort of infrastructure qualifies. If you don't know, it's not a trick question. I'm happy to wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Jesperson. And I absolutely take your advice on the reporting of road casualties, and that's obviously, yes, something that Tony Burden has been working on very closely to try and gather that additional data.
Yeah.
And yes, you're completely correct that it's not a total picture of what's happening on the roads, but it is only part of how we're prioritising that. I think in addition, just alongside that, particularly in rural areas, but also in urban areas, just the fear of injury is a major barrier to active travel.
Exactly.
And
yes,
so,
people self-regulate, don't they? So they don't walk, they don't have an accident because they've stayed off the road because they have decided it's not safe, and none of the data captures that. And you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So very quickly on the SIL and the Section 106, that is definitely a source of funding which will be used for this, and it is being used at the moment to support that. So as I mentioned to Councillor Taylor, that Active Travel England money is not the only money that's used for this, and SIL or Section 106 or development contributions is a very important part of the money that goes towards these schemes at the moment and will be in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherry. And I really think part of the point that Sherry is making was the fact that obviously if an area is considered to be unsafe for cycling and walking, people don't do it, so therefore nobody gets out there. So that's not highlighted, but I'm sure you take that sort of thing into account. Is there anyone else wish to speak? David.
Yes, thank you. I can't remember whether I said this earlier, so apologies if I'm repeating myself. I'm having a moment. Electric scooters are in use in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, particularly along the long seafront there, and provide a form of active travel. At the moment, I don't believe we in Dorset have any areas where that's been allowed. I came back from Brighton the other week, and Brighton seafront has a very long cycle path along it. I'd love to see something like that in the Weymouth area, particularly if we could take off traffic off Green Hill, the road by Green Hill, where everything narrows and it's a risky spot. I wondered whether that was mentioned anywhere within the active travel plan about a dedicated cycle path on the Esplanade. I'd certainly be supportive of it, and I'd also look for more signage on dual-use paths to respect other users, because it's one of the biggest comments I get from my residents about, and it's usually the cyclists complaining about the pedestrians and the pedestrians complaining about the cyclists. Okay, so, there's stuff like that. I wondered if you can just respond. Thank you.
Yes, very quickly, thank you. Yes, certainly that whole north-south alignment north of the town centre, whether it's on Green Hill or the seafront or whatever, is absolutely part of the plan. On micromobility on e-scooters, I'll just refer back to the kind of previous comment on that was given in the previous session, which was that we are kind of looking at applying to the Department of Transport to enable a trial to be extended to Dorset as well.
Right, thank you. No one else to speak? So you've taken those few comments on board, and can I have approval from the committee that this goes on to Cabinet, please? Oh, no, you want to speak, or are you voting, Roland? Voting, yes. Those in favour, please? Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you. So that's going to go on to Cabinet. And now we're on to the electric vehicle infrastructure strategy. Go on, Kelly, please.
Oh, okay.
She's got a pre-recorded presentation, yeah? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kelly Flynn, a Transport Planner for Dorset Council. Good morning, everybody. We will begin by having a look at the strategic overview. Dorset Council is committed to environmental sustainability and supporting the transition to electric vehicles, EVs, as part of its broader climate goals to achieve net zero emissions by 2045. This revised EV strategy further demonstrates the Council's dedication to facilitate cleaner, greener travel choices for residents and visitors. The strategy aligns with the Dorset Council plan to achieve net zero emissions by 2045 and supports national mandates such as the 2030 ban on new petrol and diesel vehicles. The strategy highlights the Council's proactive role in expanding EV infrastructure since the adoption of the initial strategy in 2021. Over the past few years, the Council, in partnership, has successfully installed publicly accessible charge points across 20 towns and villages, demonstrating tangible progress in making EV charging more accessible. This updated strategy builds on those achievements and outlines a comprehensive plan to further enhance the availability, convenience and reliability of EV charging infrastructure. It also emphasises collaboration with government bodies and businesses to ensure that residents, vehicles and local businesses can benefit from a robust EV charging network. Transport accounts for 27% of carbon dioxide emissions in Dorset, making it a significant contributor to the county's carbon footprint, climate change and public health concerns. With the UK government's mandate to ban the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030, the need for a robust and scalable electric vehicle infrastructure becomes even more critical. The strategic importance of decarbonising the transport sector is high, particularly in rural areas where public transport options are limited and there is high reliance on personal vehicles. It's estimated by 2030 up to 32% of all cars and vans within the Dorset Council area could be electric. Facilitating infrastructure development means that meets the needs of both urban and rural communities is key to supporting the shift and an enabler of Dorset Council's climate and air quality objectives. The updated strategy sets a 3-year horizon between 2025 and 2028 to focus on achievable goals and allow for regular reviews in response to rapid technological and market changes. This approach ensures Dorset remains agile and responsive in its efforts. Here's some highlights of what we've achieved since the original strategy was adopted in 2021. Dorset Council has installed 105 public EV charge point units, most with 2 sockets across 20 towns and villages in our area. 35% of Dorset's public charge points are now council sponsored. We've also installed 20 charge points across the council estate to support fleet and staff electric vehicle use. We have secured over £1 million to improve our electric vehicle charging infrastructure through successful bids to the Levi Fund, as well as around £2 million in private sector investment. The Dorset Council area has also benefited from additional funding in the form of government grants for the installation of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. A robust strategy was key to our successful funding bids. During this time, we've also carried out some community engagement activities, which include 2 internal promotion events, a survey of taxi drivers by the Energy Savings Trust to better understand their needs, and the launch of a public portal on Dorset Council's website for residents to request and suggest charge point locations. Now we'll take a look at the scope of the strategy and the vision for electric vehicle charging infrastructure within the Dorset Council area. The latest strategy outlines 8 key categories of EV infrastructure. These include destination charging and hubs, residential, en route, council site, workplace and cross-pavement home charging, as well as charging opportunities for fleet buses and taxis. Each category addresses specific user needs and logistical considerations. For example, residential charging focuses on households without off-street parking, while en route charging targets vehicles on longer journeys. Fleet electrification is a priority for us, with plans to install charge points for council vehicles and to support bus operators in transitioning to zero-emission vehicles. The strategy clarifies what is out of scope as well as what's in scope. For example, freight transport and hydrogen power are being addressed at regional or national levels. This clarity helps focus resources on areas with the highest impact and feasibility within the strategy's timeframe. Council envisions a future where electric vehicle charging is reliable, accessible and widespread across the county. This revised strategy aims to ensure that residents, businesses and visitors can easily find and use EV charge points, thereby removing charging as a barrier to electric vehicle ownership. It will do this by expanding on the Council's existing electric vehicle charging network to include more locations, particularly in underserved areas. This strategy emphasises the importance of placing the right type of infrastructure in the right locations by using data-driven analysis and stakeholder engagement to ensure that Dorset is well placed in the provision of EV infrastructure. We will now look at the objectives, key challenges and opportunities that feature in the strategy. The strategy aligns with the Dorset Council Plan 2024 to 2029 and the Department for Transport's priorities. These include economic growth, climate crisis response and greener transport. The strategy also supports the government's mission to kickstart economic growth and make Britain a clean energy superpower. The strategy's objectives are also aligned with the Local Electric Vehicle Infrastructure (LEVI) Fund, which aims to accelerate the deployment of low-power on-street charging infrastructure and to attract private investment. By supporting these objectives, councillors can help ensure that Dorset's electric vehicle infrastructure development is strategic, well-funded and responsive to community needs. This is particularly important as Dorset Council has no budget assigned to the provision of EV infrastructure. Within this strategy, 5 stages of EV infrastructure development are outlined, starting with foundation in 2021, moving on to development, growth, which is where we're currently at, expansion and maturity. Each stage reflects increasing EV market share and infrastructure needs. For example, the growth stage includes installing 750 on-street residential charge points and the first bus charging facilities within the Dorset Council area. This roadmap can be used to anticipate future needs, allocate resources and support long-term planning. Understanding these stages help ensure that Dorset remains proactive and prepared for evolving transport demands. Challenges identified in this revised strategy include the scale of infrastructure required to meet demand, seasonal tourism surges and significant investment needs. Meeting demand requires scaling infrastructure to handle increased usage, especially during peak tourism seasons. In 2024, Dorset's tourism industry saw a 35% increase in charge point usage during the summer, which requires capacity planning. Additionally, rural areas face investment barriers that increase the need for public funding. They are often considered to be less commercially attractive. Currently, the strategy is funded by over £1 million worth of LEVI pilot funding, which was successfully secured, and a £2.49 million LEVI capital bid, which has recently been awarded. There is also over £2 million worth of private sector investment committed. There has been an additional funding provided through OZEV and AUKS and workplace grants, which were government-funded schemes. There is no specific Dorset Council budget attributed to EV infrastructure delivery. Investment costs for installing and maintaining charge points are rising, and a mix of government grants, private investment and reinvestment of operating profits is necessary to ensure equitable access to public EV charging opportunities in rural and residential areas. To avoid Dorset becoming an en route charging black spot, Dorset Council is working with National Highways, the Western Gateway STB and private operators to install rapid chargers on key A roads and at strategic locations, compensating for the lack of motorways and service stations. Strategic opportunities highlighted within this updated strategy are revenue generation from charge point usage on the growing network, improved air quality and progress towards decarbonisation. These opportunities support community health, environmental goals and economic development. The strategy highlights the potential for smart charging tariffs and plug and charge technologies to enhance user experience, as well as encourage EV adoption by improving affordability and efficiency. Embracing innovation and flexible policies will help Dorset stay agile in the transition to electric mobility. We will now move on to how the updated strategy will be implemented, monitored and governed. This updated strategy continues to adopt an agile approach to infrastructure delivery, allowing Dorset Council to respond quickly to technological, market and socio-economic changes. Key elements of the delivery plan include accelerating the rollout of destination and residential charge points using Levi and private sector funding, whilst also ensuring infrastructure placement is data-driven and stakeholder informed. A residential engagement strategy will guide on-street installations, and policies are being developed for the delivery of cross-pavement charging. This revised infrastructure strategy emphasises collaboration with distribution networks, the Energy Savings Trust, and regional transport bodies to ensure effective implementation. Accessibility is a core consideration, with adherence to PAS 1899, an industry standard guideline, to ensure charge points are usable by all. The Council will play a crucial role in promoting inclusive infrastructure and supporting equitable access to electric vehicle charging. The revised EV infrastructure strategy includes a robust framework for monitoring progress through key performance indicators such as the number of electric vehicles owned in the Dorset Council area, the number of charge points, geographical coverage, charge point usage, charge point reliability, customer satisfaction, community engagement, and capital funding secured. These KPIs will be reviewed annually to ensure they remain relevant and effective. Governance is overseen by the Public Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Programme Board, which ensures that infrastructure expansion aligns with strategic goals and community interests. The board is responsible for overseeing the installation and operation of council-sponsored charge points, the delivery of the Levi scheme, and implementation of the strategy. Thank you for your time, and we now welcome the committee's feedback on the refreshed electric vehicle infrastructure strategy to be published as a supporting strategy to the Joint Local Transport Plan 4.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions in the room? David. Thank you.
I was just sort of wondering, at what point do we hand the rollout of EV sort of chargers over to the private sector? I understand that particularly in rural areas, the economic viability is likely to be limited, and therefore there's always going to be a role for government intervention. So I was just wondering, at what point do we get there? Because, and I know it's just an observation, but you very rarely see them all being used currently, and I know that we're working towards future predicted demand. But then you also see places such as Pimperne, in Councillor Jesperson's ward, who's online, where a local business person has set up a number of rapid chargers as a business opportunity, and they seem to be reasonably well used.
Thank you.
May I respond to the questions there? It is something we would very much welcome, is independent installation of electric vehicle charge points where it's achievable, and it's something that is recognised both at a government level and at a regional level with the subnational transport bodies, and there is a move at that level to encourage more independent investment into the electric vehicle charge points. It's very much seen that the government and the council's role is a starting point and to generate the interest and innovation where possible in rural areas, because we know they are less attractive and less appealing than central London and other cities in the UK.
Any reply to that? Oh, certainly it was. And is that happy? Happy with that?
Wishy-washy.
So David?
David Norther, Upwell Broadway in Weymouth. I hadn't realised until reading the report that we gained revenue from some of the EV positions that are in place. I wondered whether that's about how much energy is charged, or whether it's just a charge on the provider of the EV station, like a lease for the site. That was one question, and I'm conscious that inevitably there are going to be upgrades needed to existing EV sites, and there's already competition between EV sites in terms of primarily the speed of charging. So I didn't hear anything about upgrading all our early EV installations to more modern ones, but I take the point that if the commercial operator is taking the primary revenue, that really ought to be their concern. And lastly, I'm conscious that the Lodmore Gateway car park, there were some issues about the power network being insufficient to take the demand. So there's a knock-on impact. Okay. So those three questions, please.
Thank you, David.
If I start initially with the Lodmore car park, grid capacity is a concern, again, all across the country and the region. And there certainly are issues, but we are working closely with the distribution network operators, again, locally and on a regional level, to try and improve that, and so that we can confidently meet future demand. With regard the older generation charging units that we have in place, this strategy update is only until 2028, and those units should still be viable within that time frame. That's something that we will need to address within future strategy revisions. And apologies, there was a third question. Would you be able to repeat that for me, please?
Yeah, what's the nature of the revenue that we gain from having installations presumably on our land? Thank you.
Currently, I would need to check on this, but my understanding is that we do get revenue per charge rather than it going straight to the operators, the installers, or all of it going to the installers. We have a rate as part of our agreement with them that we will have some revenue back from each charge. So the more charges we put in, the more revenue we should receive. But I would absolutely need to clarify that with my colleague, who unfortunately is unavailable. Owen, are you able to help with that information at all?
Yeah, that is the case. So for each contract that we have with the private network operators, included within that is a revenue share of some kind, which facilitates a pence per charge recoup for the council.
Just to add to that, there are a couple of other revenue streams. So with some of the more recent ones, there is actually a bay fee. So we get a regular charge that's not directly linked to charging. So that is starting to come into play with some. And also the new procurement that's just happened in terms of rolling out the on-street charging, which is a very big project. There is actually a regular annual project management fee, which comes to the council. So that pays for staff time in helping to manage that project. So there's a range of different revenue streams coming from them.
Yes, I see that it says in the report that the invest profits from existing charge points, that would be ring-fenced to go back to the charge points. Yeah, thank you. Sherry.
Yeah, sure.
Sherry Jesperson, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sherry Jesperson, Hill Fortson Upper Tarrants Ward. Thank you, Kelly, for this report. It's all, it seems to me, making good progress here. But the point I have to make every time that we have this discussion is that it's all very well and it's all very commendable that we are increasing the number of public charge points around the county. But the reality is that we are not ever going to reach the target take-up for electric vehicles until we have addressed the problematic question of household recharging. I think it's I don't remember the number, but you'll know the number, the percentage of homes in Dorset that don't have access to off-street charging space. I think it's something like 46%, but don't quote me on that. But it's significant, and the price differential between charging one's car at Tesco's or at some other, or even on a Dorset Council car park, and charging at home is absolutely massive. It's so significant. So there's the cost differential there is really, really very significant. And also the I was going to say convenience, but convenience doesn't come close to it. The idea that a vulnerable car user, such as I might be by the time I get round to buying an electric car, is going to sit for 3 or 4 hours in a cold, wet, unlit public car park of an evening to recharge my electric vehicle at enormous cost in order to get to work the following morning. Well, it's just never going to happen, is it? I mean, it wouldn't be safe, it wouldn't be convenient, and it would never be worth the candle. So I think we really, really have to focus on what we're going to do. To me, the absolute priority here is not more public charging points, which I think will roll out through the public sector. Where Dorset Council should be really prioritising is what we're going to do to make it possible, not feasible, but absolutely possible for people who don't have off-street parking at their home to charge their cars from their home. And over the pavement cables are one part of that solution, but of course in whole swathes of rural areas where all my residents live, there's no pavement, and you can't necessarily park outside your own house anyway. So this is a real challenge. One of the things we are going to have to do is we're going to have to do again some joined up thinking here with our conservation team and our people who look after listed buildings and conservation areas and our planning teams, because they're going to have to think carefully before they say you can't alter the front of your building, which means you can't have an electric charging point. So there's a whole range of really big challenges there. And I think that until we address those challenges, the likelihood of us meeting our targets is much reduced, because the key thing is here, the price differential between the cost of running an electric vehicle, if you have to charge it always at a public charging point and at home, is insurmountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherry.
Thank you, Councillor Jessup. You make very valid points, and totally agree with you with regards to the safety of vulnerable people, and that's why in the strategy we have highlighted that wherever possible we will adhere to the PAS 1899 standard guideline, which looks at placing charge points in safe, well-lit areas for usage by vulnerable people in particular, and the home, as regards the home charging aspect, that is included in this overarching strategy, and a policy is being worked up at present by our delivery team, who are looking to trial home charging within the Dorset Council area, which will hopefully help address some of the inequitable charging charging options that are available at the moment. Please accept my apologies. My speech is a little affected at the moment, so I might be a little shaky.
Thank you very much. That's a good answer. Thanks, Kelly.
That's no problem, Kelly. Right.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. I think one of the things of refreshing this strategy is marking that sort of change in emphasis of what we're trying to achieve. So the first phase was about getting charge points into our car parks. You could see that as the low-hanging fruit. We could address that quite quickly. We own the asset. We can work with a private operator to get those in. The emphasis now shifts to the residential charging. How can we get those charge points into those households that don't have off-street car parking available to them, private parking? So the way in which we'll be doing that is accessing a government funding allocation, which is nearly £2.5 million, but is actually being match funded by the private sector. So you're seeing a £5 million investment in residential charging in Dorset, and that will be starting to roll out as a minimum to deliver 750 charge points in residential settings.
Can I ask if what the nature of those settings, the charge points would be? But one of the problems obviously is the cables. We don't really want, if we can afford it, having cables running across the pavement. Are they looking at putting the charge points on the road side of the pavement, which should seem to make them vulnerable to traffic accidents? Do you know how we're going to get around that?
There will be a variety of solutions. Some will be build-outs if the roads are suitable for that. So you'd have a little build-out from the pavement where the unit would be. Others would be other technological solutions in the footway, such as a gully or cable cover. That's what the trial will be looking at as to what is the most effective solution, and that's why the strategy highlights that we want to put the right technological solution in the right places for people.
Thank you very much.
I think just to add to that, recognising that Dorset's urban landscapes are very different, so there isn't really a one-size-fits-all solution to this. It's got to be designed in partnership with the local community, so they accept these charge points in their local areas.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Hey, Brian.
Oh, sorry, Brian. Sorry, Ray. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Let me just bring up my notes so that I don't forget what I've written down. I'm a little, as you know, we brought this to scrutiny last week, and some of the items that were raised at scrutiny, I think, are relevant to this discussion. Every electrical recharge point within a car park reduces car park revenue, because if you walk outside the front of County Hall at the moment, you'll find the car park is probably full, but the charging element doesn't seem to get a lot of use in the times I've visited. So I'm still concerned about whilst we gain revenue on one side, we lose revenue on the other. And there is no data available, because I asked the question as to how much it's costing in parking revenue. So, and again, DC supported sites, the cost of charges seems to be much higher than those at supermarkets and roadside coffee shops. We did ask at the scrutiny committee that a sign is put on the machines showing how much it costs to charge your car. And I should be interested to see whether this forms part of the ongoing programme. And my big concern is grid capacity, because if the local plan, as stated, goes ahead, then that's going to drain the grid of any surplus electricity capacity. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to come in late. I had got my hand up as quickly as I could, but thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Always a pleasure to hear from you. Have we got any answers to raise some points?
I'm afraid I'm not well placed enough with the revenue detail to answer that. Raise comments. Sorry, John.
Sorry.
You go.
Well done, Kelly. Great presentation, by the way. Yeah, some of those points that Councillor Bryan brought up were definitely brought up in scrutiny and have been noted for recommendation going forward. So the price points on the electrical charges in our car parks, etc. You know, so much more expensive than A, at home, B, some of the supermarkets and coffee points. People need to be aware of what they're being charged when they go to those points, even though it is displayed when you go to access them, how much it is. But yeah, so we totally take that, Ray. And the other points that Councillor Bryan brought up were noted at scrutiny. So that will go forward. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Is there anything else to be said on this issue? Any questions or anything? No, nobody else? Okay, well, thank you very much, Kelly, for your presentation. Thank you. So that's not coming back to us, is it? No. So everyone's happy for that? Yep. Can I take a vote on that, please? Thank you.
No need.
Oh, sorry.
No need, Spam.
No. Right. Anyway, right. Then we go on to. Sorry. Yes. Yes. The Placement Resources Overview Committee Work Programme. Has anyone got any suggestions of things we should be looking at, please? Do we have things in the pipeline, Anthony, so that obviously the first item today is going to come back sometime?
Yeah, the local nature recovery strategy is coming to November following our informal briefing. And then we've got a planning session on the 9th of October to look forward into 2026. So,
okay, thank you. Right, so I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you for your presentation. Any other exempt urgent items? No. Exempt business? No. So that's all. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you. Bye.